You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast. This is the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me at official Sam Little on Instagram. There's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. And thank you so much for deciding to spend another many minutes with me as we discuss the Prem and some Canadian boys. So speaking of the Canadian boys, let's immediately jump into the Maple start as we tend to do here. So big news for Tajon Buchanan. He is through to another final, which actually, as I'm recording this episode, I'm watching. It's on in the background right now. So if you hear me start cheering or going, oh, that's why I'm rooting for Inter, obviously, because Tajon. He's currently on the bench, but you know, maybe he gets on. Hopefully he does. If he does win this will be, off the top of my head, I think his third piece of silverware. Obviously, he won this competition last year, not playing a single minute as he had just signed for the club. And then he won the league last year. So this, like I said, top of my head, I believe it's 3 trophies. I know those 2 for sure. Maybe there's another one that's snuck in there that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, so fingers crossed he wins it right now. The game probably won't be over by the time I'm done recording this, but if it is, I will let you know if he won or lost. Jamie Knight-Labelle, we talked about him last week, and we are talking about him again because he scored his second professional goal now. So the center back is starting to find his goal-scoring boots, it seems. It was a nice goal, well worked by the crew, and then Jamie Knight-Labelle there to kind of just head it in. Nice little header there. And yeah, just a proper center back finish. And then, of course, finally, Derek Cornelius was back in the Marseille starting 11 following his injury in late October, early November, I think. And yeah, it was good to see. He went 79 minutes in a 5-1 win in League. Ishmael Kone came off the bench in the technically right after halftime. Sorry, not in the 40th. We'll just say at halftime just to keep it simple, you know? And yeah, that kind of sums up the big stories. Oh, actually, today I didn't write in my notes because it literally happened this morning. Jonathan David has been nominated for the EA Sports Team of the Year. So definitely, I think you can vote for that one, I believe. If you feel so inclined to vote, I believe it's a fan-voted one. Go ahead, vote for our boy Jonathan David. And yeah, hopefully he gets into it. And yeah, there's more on Jonathan David, actually. The more I talk about him, the more I'm remembering about him. Currently, apparently, rumor has it, his agents, team, camp, whatever you want to call them, are in talks at the moment with 4 Premier League clubs, and I believe it was 2 Serie A clubs. So it seems as though the move will be happening on the free, I would assume, because now that it's January, he could sign a pre-contract anywhere, and he is then going to be a part of that team come the summer. So we'll see where he goes. I still think he would kill it in Serie A, if I'm being honest. I think his game is really suited to that. I think he could obviously still do well in the Premier League, of course. But yeah, just the Serie A really feels tailor-made for him, in my opinion. But wherever he goes, obviously, we'll support him. Hope he does the best that he possibly can. And I'm interested to know who the 4 teams are. There's been rumors of Liverpool, rumors of Chelsea, rumors of Arsenal. So I'd be very interested to see if those teams are some of the teams or not, you know? But anyways, that kind of brings us to an end of the Maple start. Let's kind of dive into the Prem recap. And if this is your first time listening, this is how we break it down. We go match of the weekend, biggest winners of the weekend, biggest underperformers, best performance, moment of the weekend, relegation zone, European places, and the title race. So firstly, moving into match of the weekend, I've got Brentford thumping Southampton 5-0. More so just for the fact of if you want to see just a real one-sided affair with some nice goals and high scoring, this is the game for you to watch the highlights of or to rewatch or anything like that. This is the game. Kevin Charter started the game off well in what seems to be kind of a little bit of a breakout season for him. Many match days ago, he got 3 goals and an assist in one game. Now he's added another goal to the tally. He's on 5 goals, 2 assists. Not bad at all, I would say. I'd be very happy with that tally. But yeah, no, it feels like a bit of a breakout season for him at the moment, playing well, getting into the Brentford lineup, and just consistently kind of starting to produce. And, he's a young guy. He's only 23 years old, so this is kind of the stuff that you really like to see, want to pay attention to. And then Brian Mbeumo, also, who's having a rather good season, scored 2, assisted 1, and 1 was a penalty, of course, but still, they all count, baby. Lewis Potter and Johan Wissa gave you a quick 1-2 punch in the 92nd and 94th minute as they quickly went from 3 to 5-0 in the blink of an eye. But yeah, I mean, Brentford to me have been a very strong mid-table side, kind of, as I've talked about many times, kind of in that middle pack of teams that have been really fun to watch, but they've kind of seen themselves not really pushing in that European race. You never know. They could maybe sneak their way into Conference League or Europa League, still half a season ahead, basically. Well, just less than half if we want to get technical. But yeah, no, they've been a lot of fun to watch when I've been able to watch them, and this kind of was that game where it was like, okay, yeah, like this has been coming. They've deserved a big result like this. And I mean, poor Southampton. I do, as I think I say every episode, feel for their fans, because it's just like, it just sucks, doesn't it? So it's a shame because they're a good fan base, but yeah, it's not looking great for them, and it hasn't all season, as I've been saying. So we'll see what happens to them. But Brentford, yeah, just top class performance from a very good side at the moment. Very excited to see what the rest of their season kind of holds, because maybe they aren't, pushing for like a Europa League or a Europa Conference League spot, but they do still feel like the team that like you're going to play them and you're going to be worried that they can get something off of you, whether it's a draw, whether it's a win, because they are a quality team. They're very well oiled, got a lot of good players. Like, as I said, Mbeumo, Wissa, and Sharder are all in very good form at the moment. Damsgaard as well, by the way. What a player he's been this season. So they just feel like that team that you're going to worry about. Like, it's not like, oh, we're playing Brentford this weekend, easy 3. They're gonna be a tough challenge. So, AC Milan. Okay, took a deflection. We're good. Anyways, moving into the other match of the weekend, and if you're sick of hearing me talk about Liverpool, well, guess what? We're talking about them again. Liverpool, Manchester United, a bit of a dull first half, I would say. Lively moments here and there, but the second half really came alive here. Quick goals, Lorenzo Martinez. I do also find it funny that Jamie Carragher, Liverpool boy, of course, criticized Lisandro Martinez for like his style of play and, perhaps being too small. And then he scores a goal against Liverpool at Anfield. Obviously, doesn't do anything to help his case defensively, but I do just find it funny when stuff like that happens, where it's like the guy gets criticized by someone and then scores. And then obviously a bit funnier that it's against his team. Cody Gakpo then with probably goal of the weekend. Absolutely outrageous finish. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Probably my pick of the bunch, I would say, for goal of the weekend. It was a phenomenal goal. Just takes it, has it. It's beautiful, really. And then Matthias de Ligt gives away a penalty. Mohamed Salah converts it. I really don't know what de Ligt was doing. His arm is like all the way up. I don't know, I don't really know what he's doing. You got to control that, especially when you're at Anfield against Liverpool in like one of your biggest really of the season. And I just don't understand why he's doing that. Mohamed Salah, of course, converts. I'm not one to like criticize a goalkeeper when I think they should like save a penalty, because like obviously keeper's not really meant to save a penalty. But I feel like Onana got enough of this one. Salah like hit it, but like to me, he didn't like hit it with a ton of power. Like we all know Mohamed Salah penalty, like he just fires it, and he definitely struck this one very hard, but it feels like Onana got enough of it to keep it out. That's just my opinion. I could be being extremely harsh, and if you think that, that's 100% fair. And then Liverpool decided to shut off and give Manchester United their second goal of the game. Credit to Diallo. Nice finish, clever little finish, but don't really know what the Liverpool defense is doing there. And then, game ends 2-2. Apparently reported dust-up between Van Dijk and then Alexander-Arnold and Darwin Nunez after the game. Obviously, Van Dijk, many points in that game, was not pleased with Alexander-Arnold, and rightfully so. I thought Alexander-Arnold was extremely lazy on the day, which has always been a criticism of his game. I do back him as a pretty good defender, but there are just games where you watch and you go, what are you doing? Like, just kind of stopping, giving the ball away cheaply, just letting guys run around him. And that was happening a lot on the day, and you could see it in Van Dijk. He was not pleased. So I don't know if those reports are true, but I would probably believe them. And then Darwin Nunez coming on and then gets suspended for next game because he gets a yellow card. I can understand, once again, as the captain of the club, why you're very, very irritated at that. You've dropped points preventably. You could have prevented it. And then you got Darwin Nunez coming in and getting suspended for the next game. Alexander-Arnold looking uninterested. I can understand why he would potentially maybe have some choice words for them after the game. So yeah, like I said, don't know if it's true or not. I would lean towards actually probably believing it, and I don't believe every single report I believe. Ooh, sorry, happened. DeMarco for Inter Milan just had a nice little shot. I love DeMarco, by the way. One of my favorite players to watch right now. But yeah, no, it's I think it's a preventable 2 points that they've lost here, Liverpool. United, credit to them. They looked up for this, as in either of these teams' worst years, they're always going to look up for the Liverpool or United game, whichever one of them is playing poor. I will say, I do think Manchester United's defense, while the bar is pretty low, looked pretty decent compared to how they've looked throughout the season. Obviously, still like those mistakes, like that De Ligt handball. Obviously, like Cody Gakpo getting in behind, kind of doing his thing, and then just firing off an absolute rocket. Like, yeah, like there are things that they could have done to, like, not concede. But I do actually think that, like, they didn't look awful. Like, they did look like they can perform. Then you have Mazraoui. I think he's been one of United's stronger players this year, and he looked pretty good on the day. Ugarte, Mainu. I mean, Mainu had a funny moment where he kind of like slipped in the snow. Kind of just funny is all. I actually do really rate Mainu. I think he's quite good. Rasmus Højlund really lacked any impact on the game, as he kind of seems to. Bruno Fernandes isn't the stats guy that he used to be, where like you could count him for a goal or an assist, and I think his game kind of dipped since then. He's not as good, not as influential. He didn't look terrible on the day, but he just kind of looks like, I don't know, maybe nothing's really going to happen through him. But Diallo, who kind of like Mazraoui, has been very good for United this season. He stepped up big and puts in, like I said, a clever little finish. So it was definitely an eventful second half, I would say. First half, not so much. But second half was quite good. So if you want to check out the highlights of that game, I'm telling you right now, the only highlights you will see will be from the second half. But yeah, no, definitely, if you want, go check those out. And especially if you do nothing else, check out that Cody Gakpo goal. Unreal finish. So we'll move into biggest winners of the weekend, and I think first and foremost, it has to be Manchester City, looking like they've gotten their season potentially a little bit back on track. Now they're just 2 points outside of top four. Yeah, by the way, they like went on like this notorious losing streak. Well, winless streak, I should say. and they're still now just 2 points off the top four after getting like 2 wins in a row. So this is why I've been saying if anybody can turn this around, it's Manchester City, because they can. Like, don't count these guys out at all. But a big 4-1 win over West Ham. Erling Haaland gets a brace, Kufal own goal, and Phil Foden wraps it up to make it 4-0 at the time. Fulkrug gets one back, but it's all for naught. I mean, it's what they do, right? Like, it's what they do. This time of year hits and Manchester City goes on their inevitable 15-game winning streak. So I'm not really surprised, honestly. I've been saying for weeks now, if anybody can turn around, it'll be Manchester City. And guess what? They're starting to turn it around. Who knows? Maybe it's only 2 wins in a row, and now they're going to just go back to being not so good. But I really don't think so. I think that we are seeing them turn it around. They're going to be in the top 4 before we know it, let's be honest. And could honestly, I know they're 12 points off it right now, but could be pushing for another Premier League title. It's, like I said, it's what they do. They have to be in here because I really do feel like this is the turning point for them. But kind of moving away from them, let's talk about Ipswich, because once again, they get a result. Of course, it's a draw, but it's a big result, I think. I said last week after they beat Chelsea, maybe this is kind of the one that kind of kickstarts a better second half of the season, getting results, whatnot. They still kind of fall victim to not being able to see the game out. They do concede very late here, but I do still think that getting this point after such a big win last week, I think it's pretty big for them. Liam Delap once again steps up, converts a big pressure penalty. He is showing that he is every bit of the real deal that I believe him to be. And 2 minutes before that, Raul Jimenez converted his penalty, and then in the end, Raul Jimenez converted a second penalty in the 91st minute to stifle Ipswich's chances of winning. But still, I do think 2 pretty good results, 4 points from 2 games. I think Ipswich would take that. I think that they would, because that's big. They're now level on points with Wolverhampton, and just behind them on goal difference. So the relegation battle is most definitely heating up around these parts. Sorry, that was dumb. But my last kind of big winner is Newcastle, who, to no one's surprise, do in fact beat Tottenham. I'm very sorry to Tottenham fans if you're listening to this, because I'm not even trying to intentionally pick on them. But teams just seem to get good results against you, so I'm very sorry. But yeah, I mean, this had a frantic first 6 minutes. Anthony Gordon and Dominic Solanke both finding the back of the net, and then Alexander Isak once again continuing a very, very good season for himself as he gets another goal. Let me see how many goals that is for him this season. Stand by. 13 goals and 4 assists. That's a good tally, that. But Newcastle does take advantage of certain teams around them dropping points, i.e. Chelsea, because Newcastle now just 1 point off of Chelsea in top 4. Of course, Manchester City breathing down both of their necks, being 2 points off Chelsea and 1 point off of Newcastle. But still, they do take advantage of that. And to kind of want to be in a top 4 race, you have to take advantage of those drop points, of those games where, the guys around you aren't performing well, but you are. And it's big because I think Newcastle last season didn't do that. They weren't taking advantage of the things around them, and it cost them greatly in the end, having not a great season last year. But now this year, they kind of look to be back to the Newcastle that they were 2 years ago, where they were pushing for Champions League, and then of course did end up getting into Champions League. So I think it's big for Newcastle, and they could string together a nice run of games here where they could perchance see themselves fighting for top 4 still. They got Wolves next, Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham, and then taking us right after Valentine's Day, they got City, Newcastle, and Liverpool kind of setting out their next month and a half there. There's some winnable games there, and even some of the games that could be tricky, you never know. Like Liverpool's got a lot of games at that point that they will have played. City will have played a lot between all the cups, Champions League, and of course Prem action. Newcastle could feel a little bit more fresh. They could feel a little bit more dangerous. You never know. So I think that they could kind of really see themselves get a good run of games in here where they could rack up some big points, big wins, even big draws too. Obviously, those aren't the easiest, like it's not the easiest schedule ever, but I do think that they are capable of pulling off a good number of upsets within that run, and you could see them really still flirting with or even getting into that top 4. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, with all that being said, let's kind of move into the negatives here, and let's talk about some underperformers because there's a good few. We shall start off with my boys yet again, the glorious Chelsea FC, because once again they find themselves dropping points in a scenario of which they should not have dropped points. Question marks still being raised. I think during this kind of run, this is now 4 in a row that they have not won, and it's poor because these felt like 4 games that they should get more than 2 points from. They got 1 point from Everton, none from Fulham, none from Ipswich, and 1 from Palace. Realistically, the only one that you would think on paper would have caused them any little bit of problem would have been probably Fulham, just because they're the best team there. But yeah, no, it's the same things that I've talked about already. Not seeing out the game, not finishing the chances. Enzo Maresca's subs have been questionable. And just kind of shutting off at key times, like they shut off for the Mateta goal. And, they don't finish their chances. Nicholas Jackson, like I've sang his praises this season because he's looked improved compared to last year. But these last 4, 5, 6 games, he's looked like the Nicholas Jackson of last season. Looks like he can't finish, unconfident, not really a danger. Whereas at the start of the season, he was looking quite good. And really, this one should have been done dusted by halftime for Chelsea. And then the substitutions don't make any sense. Jadon Sancho, looking like their most lively player that's going to create something alongside Cole Palmer. He gets pulled off for a guy that doesn't create anything on the day. Remind you of anything? Yeah, last game when they did this to Felix, he looked the most creative guy on the pitch, not named Cole Palmer, and gets pulled off extremely quickly. So I don't really understand it. I don't know. I just don't get it. I will kind of reserve my Chelsea-ness, and I'll move into the next underperformer of the weekend. And I do have to say, I do think it's a big missed opportunity for Liverpool here. Arsenal dropped points, which means Liverpool could have gone 8 points up on them with a game in hand. 6 is obviously still good, but 8's better, isn't it? And it's a funny one because I look at this, I'm like, that's a good result for Manchester United, and I look at it for Liverpool, I'm like, that's a bad result for Liverpool. And I think that kind of is a testament to where both teams are at the moment. But it's one that you kind of look at and you go, that's a missed opportunity. It really is, because this is not a good Manchester United side. They're not. I've been quite vocal about that. And this Liverpool side, they are good. But the same frailties kind of reared their ugly head again this time out with, just turning off completely, whether it's defense, midfield, attack, whatever, what have you, missed chances, not defending as good as we know that they can. And like I said, just letting the opponent back into the game as they did with Manchester United. Manchester United, once Salah scored that penalty, it's a case of see it out now. See it out, maybe go for another, but see this out. You're 2-1 up. There's 20 minutes left. This is not a great side that you're playing. And you don't. And not only do you not, you shoot yourself in the foot because you let them back in. So it's kind of those moments where I've kind of harped on about Liverpool. They've gotten champion-like results but haven't played like champions. And this is one of those games where it's like they didn't play like champions. And I think, they are still the league leaders by a lot, but it is moments like this where it's like they are capable of dropping points left, right, and center, I think. And I think we could see the next half season kind of go one of two ways. We're either going to see Liverpool really like expand that lead and they're just going to turn a switch and they're going to look the part, they're going to play the part, or we're going to see them drop a lot of points and you're going to see teams like City, Arsenal really make up ground on them. So we'll see. Oh, this looks like a promising Inter attack. Nice goal. Inter 1-0 up. Tejan Buchanan very close to another trophy. About to go into halftime here. Sorry, this is both a podcast episode and a commentary track apparently, but as I was saying, we'll kind of see how this plays out for Liverpool over the next half season. It's not the result that's like the end of the world or nothing like that, but when you're playing a team where it feels like they could have been beaten and you kind of feel like the guys that kind of undid yourselves, it does feel like something that you kind of do have to talk about. But enough talking about Liverpool. Let's talk about another side in red that I do feel dropped points badly, I think, this weekend. And it's Arsenal. Controversially, maybe. I don't know. A lot of controversy around that penalty. To me, it's a soft one. It is a soft one. But, you know, that's the Premier League, I guess. But, yeah, no, this is kind of much like Liverpool, a game that you probably should have won against Brighton here, and you don't. And especially now, retrospectively looking back, with Liverpool dropping points, if Arsenal had won, they would have closed that gap to 4 points. Obviously, still Liverpool that game in hand, but still would have been close to 4 points, and that's not a bad place to be in. But instead, they're still 6 points behind Liverpool, and I think it's the same issues with Arsenal, really, that I've kind of mentioned. They don't look super creative when the ball's in play. They're deadly on set pieces. Like, let's be honest, they are deadly on those set pieces. But kind of in play, they're not a team that, like, I'm scared of, you know, where it's like, oh man, like City, if they're in possession in the game, you're scared of what they can do. Liverpool, same thing. But like with Arsenal, it's kind of like maybe something might happen, but they just don't really scream like that creativity. And I think it's just they kind of set up in a sense to like not lose games, where it's like if you're a title challenger, you got to set up to win games, not to just not lose them. They played this game very defensive minded. I mean, you know, look at their back four. They put out Thomas Horney, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, and then just above them, Jorginho Moreno and Rice. All of those guys are extremely defensive minded players. And then you're really leaving it all on your front three to do anything at all. And that's a lot to put on three guys, really, because like the fullbacks here with Parney and Calafiori, they're not like attack minded fullbacks. Like, they're really not, in my opinion, at least. And then, you know, the midfield themselves, they're not super attack minded either. And I think it's a case of Mikel Arteta is going out to not lose, when as a title contender, you have to go out to win. And they didn't do that here, and I find that they haven't done it at many different points in the season. I mean, they're time wasting in the first half. Like, come on, you know? So I'm not sure it's something that's gonna change, at least while Mikel Arteta is still in charge. This is why I kind of say, perchance maybe if I was an Arsenal higher up, I'd be looking at finding another coach that can get you to the finish line. Mikel Arteta's done a great job at rebuilding the squad, but now you need someone that can get you to the next phase of this project, to get you to these big trophies. And I mean, like, Premier Leagues, back in Champions League regularly, potentially challenging for that, you know, That's my opinion. That's my opinion on our underwhelmers of the weekend. Very top heavy, actually, if we're being real here. Let's move into our best performance, because I do think there is a good few little shout outs I want to give. So let's shout those shout outs out. Firstly, I do have two City boys. Savinho, who gets 2 assists on the day. He broke his duck last weekend, if you will, as he got his first goal for Manchester City. It was felt like a long time coming. Young Brazilian boy, though. So that's 5 assists on the season, 1 goal. But yeah, this game he looked a very good creative outlet, which City has been extremely lacking. He himself would probably tell you he hasn't had his best start to life at City, but he's kind of looking, as City kind of have, to maybe potentially have turned a corner. Had a very good game out here. And then, of course, the guy that he assisted twice, Erling Haaland. I mean, he's just a machine, isn't he? Even when City wasn't looking great, I did think that Erling Haaland looked like their best performer. He was still racking up goals. Not as much, of course, as he has in the past. Went on a couple goal droughts that lasted, I'm sure, 1 game maybe? I'm kidding. There was actually a goal drought in those performances. But in all seriousness, he's looked their best player all season, looked a constant threat even when he wasn't scoring. And now he's once again back in the goals. I believe he's second in the Golden Boot race, just behind Mohamed Salah. So this City side has turned the corner, I think, and I'm comfortable and confident in saying that. And you're seeing it with these 2 young players here, especially Savinho, who has been criticized heavily this season, but definitely looking very good at the moment. And I think it's what they need. They need that fresh young blood, as I've been criticizing them for letting go so many young talents, because eventually, all their players were going to get old, as you do. And then they kind of let go a bunch of these young, talented players. But they've brought in some decent young talent, some better than others. And Savinho here he is a good player. And Erling Haaland, of course, is a phenomenal striker. Moving back, let's talk about Brentford a little bit. And let's talk about Bryan Mbeumo, who, once again, has a very good game that goes under the radar. So let's make sure it doesn't go under the radar, because 2 goals plus an assist. Very good afternoon for him. He's had a very good season. Really filling that void of Ivan Toney. Of course, Mbeumo's not a striker, but feeling like the guy to carry the club at the moment. 13 goals, 3 assists on the season. Yeah, he's had a very good season. Like I said, stepping in to be the guy for the club after Toney has left. He's looked good. He's looked very good, and this is a very good performance from him. Brentford, I don't think, are enjoying the success that they've had this year if it isn't for him, and they definitely aren't enjoying this big win against Southampton if it wasn't for him. He plays a massive part here, and yeah, I think that there will be, potentially, maybe, some clubs sniffing around him, maybe kicking some tires, potentially, seeing if he is willing to leave Brentford and see pastures new. Let's move into moment of the weekend. There was a couple very nice moments, and one that kind of stands above the rest, in my opinion, and it is David Brooks scoring against Everton, coming up massive for his club in a game that looked like maybe they were going to drop points, but they do get all 3. But I want to mention this just because David Brooks had stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma just a couple of years ago, and of course you know how serious that is. So it's beautiful to see him not only obviously beat that, and that in itself is bigger than any accomplishment I think that he could possibly have in football, but beat that, get back to a level of which he is Premier League ready, Premier League caliber. Went on loan last year to Southampton, did well, of course, and then here he steps up massive. It's a great goal too. You see what it means to him as well. This is his 2nd goal back for Bournemouth, his 2nd goal of the season as well, and you can just see what it means to him. And those fans go absolutely insane for it too. It's one of those moments where you kind of just get chills. You get that good feeling, you know what I mean? You get that good feeling deep down where it's that's pretty awesome. So once, if you know what, scratch what I said about Cody Gakpo. If there's one thing you do after this episode, go watch David Brooks's goal and go watch the celebration. You see, like I said, you just see the pure emotion, and there's nothing better than that, in my opinion. So that had to be number one moment of the weekend, but I'm gonna list off a couple more just because there were some things I wanted to get in there. So firstly, after obviously David Brooke, secondly, I should say, the Cody Gakpo goal. That to me is just such like a great. I can't stop harping on about that goal. It was such a phenomenal goal, and it's good to see because Cody Gakpo, like I've said in a few episodes now, has been kind of like an underappreciated member of that Liverpool squad. And another one because it wasn't all doom and gloom for Chelsea this weekend. There was at least 15 good minutes, and I want to give Jadon Sancho some credit here because his assist on the Cole Palmer goal against Crystal Palace was one of my favorite assists this season. It's a great dummy by him to let the ball run, and he goes past the Crystal Palace player, carries the ball, takes on a good few guys, and lays the ball off to Cole Palmer, who touches and then scores. Very nice goal. Very nice goal. Well worked. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that just because, like I said, I wanted to kind of talk about it, but then Chelsea kind of, decided to not win the game. So I wanted to talk about it here. But yeah, 100% David Brooks, absolutely the moment of the weekend. The other two were just two things that I wanted to kind of discuss a little bit. But yeah, David Brooks, absolutely best moment of the weekend by a country mile, I would say. So moment of the weekend, done and dusted. Let's move into our relegation zone. Southampton still, of course, rooted to the bottom of the table. Leicester dropped points yet again, and it was to Aston Villa, who are, of course, a good team, but they just... I do harp on Leicester a lot here of just like they haven't been good, and they haven't been. But, of course, like their season's not over yet. They still have half a season left, and they still very much could find their way to safety. But yeah, they're gonna have to really turn. They're gonna have to really turn it around coming into this next half of the season because I've been extremely unimpressed, and just unimpressed with the players too. They don't look interested. They don't look like they want to fight for the badge. Don't look like they want to fight for the fans. Jamie Vardy excluded, of course, because he I think would do anything for that club. But just above them, of course, Ipswich. Big draw, I think, coming off of that big win against Chelsea. Of course, still, I think a lot of work to be done, and they would probably tell you the same thing. But still, definitely a good result, I would say, following a great result. And then above them, outside of the relegation zone, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Once again, looking like they could turn a corner here. Currently, right now, as I'm recording this, are playing against Nottingham Forest. So we'll see how that game kind of plays out. But if they say lose, they're just 1 point off relegation. If they win, they go 3 points outside of relegation, and they will leapfrog Everton and be 2 points off of Palace in 15th. So I think it's a big game for them against Nottingham Forest here. Nottingham Forest, of course, no easy task, but I think Wolves could pull off an upset maybe. Is that going to age poorly? Probably. And then above them is Everton, who obviously lost to Bournemouth. Everton, like I say, I think they'll get 2-0 Inter Milan right now. Everton could get lucky just with the fact that I think that there are teams that are just like happen to be worse than them, but also to give them credit, they have shown that they can dig deep and get results. So I think just above them as well, Crystal Palace, 4 points above Everton, but still it does feel like Palace are kind of in the thick of it as well. So I think the relegation battle is definitely heating up a good amount, as was expected once you kind of get past that December into January phase of the season. You're kind of looking and you're going, okay, so this is kind of where the teams are. This is kind of the races we'll be watching for the remainder of this season, unless something miraculous happens and all of these teams just start friggin' winning all the time. But yeah, this was kind of to be expected. We're kind of seeing how the league table is shaping up, and we're kind of seeing the battles that we'll be watching throughout the remainder of the season. But let's talk about Europe, and let's talk about those middle pack boys that I have loved watching this season. You got Fulham, Villa, Bournemouth, Newcastle, and I mean City's technically below Newcastle, but I still kind of honestly put City in the title race. But they are still, of course, chasing Europe. And yeah, I think each of these teams did get points this weekend, whether it was just one or all three, but all of them kind of keeping those aspirations of getting into potentially Europa Conference League or the Europa League, or even, who knows, Champions League as well. They're keeping those hopes alive here. And once again, kind of like the relegation battle, we're kind of seeing that this could be a big race because there's only so many spots for these European for Europe, and a lot of these teams look like they've been good enough to get there. So this could heat up to be one of the more interesting European races that we've seen in a little bit, honestly. You have your top four boys of Chelsea, Forest, Arsenal, and Newcastle just right outside of it. Chelsea dropping points. They've found themselves going from potential title contenders, depending on who you ask, but second place, we will say that, from second place to looking like the next half of the season is going to be a dogfight for top four. Newcastle are really showing some grit in between their teeth, showing that they are a very good side. And then, of course, Nottingham Forest, I think, has blown everyone away in what they expected from them, because they are sitting third. Once again, as they are playing Wolves right now, they could get level on points with Arsenal, but unless they beat Wolves by like 15 goals, they won't leapfrog them in the table. I mean, it'd be pretty impressive if they did. But regardless, either way, they are still very much up there and looking like they're gonna get some form of Europe, whether it is them staying in Champions League or dropping down to Europa League. But it really does feel like Nottingham Forest is going to make a return to Europe in some capacity. And then, of course, we have our title race. Both kind of the top two teams right now dropping points. Manchester City well behind them, but really not. Only 6 points off of Arsenal. They are a whole 12 points off of Liverpool. But, like I said with City, they're always that one game away from starting their run of, 15-game win streak. And all it takes is Liverpool and Arsenal just dropping points, and before you know it, Manchester City are really well and truly back in the title race. And oh my goodness, that's a nice goal. AC Milan now making it 2-1. But yeah, Arsenal dropping points, as we have discussed. Liverpool also dropping points, and both of them kind of feeling like the creators of their own downfalls in those games, particularly. But we will kind of see how this plays out. Of course, still half a season remaining. Liverpool, like I said, I can see their season going one of two ways. They're either going to fully destruct here, or we will just see them just rack up. Like, they're going to, generationally lock in and, just go on this absurd run and just really, really create a gulf between them and everybody else, because it really feels like they could go either way here. Arsenal, I do think that they are a very good side, but it just feels like they're missing a couple of things for me to really be like, yes, this is their year. And then, I know City's in 6th, but it does really feel like they have turned that corner. And if I am anybody who is above City, I'm starting to go, oh shoot, this ain't great. But yeah, so that kind of brings to an end this episode of the Maple Footy Podcast. Thank you for listening to part podcast, part commentary track. I do appreciate it. Keep an eye out. I will be dropping a 2024 Wrapped for our Canadian footy, fully Canadian, CPL, MLS, boys abroad, girls, all that fun stuff. So keep an eye out for that. I will be dropping that later this week. I'm very excited about that. And I hope that you listen to that. I hope you listen to this and enjoy. And thank you so much for listening. I, of course, appreciate it. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates at Official Sam Little on Instagram, where I am most active. And until next time, live, laugh, little.